This beautiful passage could guide your whole life. Oh, if we could clothe ourselves in compassion, and as we walk through each day, live with a kindness and patience, a humility. I got lost on my way to Alexandria. I had a wedding in Minnesota last week, and my phone is all glitched up, so I can't use its navigational system or spoken directions. So before I left early that morning, I printed off Google directions from my computer. I printed off the directions. It felt as if it was prehistoric. I mean, are you hearing me? I wouldn't have spoken directions as I went along. I would actually have to know when I wanted to turn the car myself. This is Lewis and Clark stuff. I mean, are you hearing me? The phone wouldn't be telling me. I would have to know when I wanted to turn. This is Marco Polo stuff. Now, everything worked out okay until I got to Minnesota, and those written directions were having me use county roads. And here's the thing about Minnesota. They have like 5 days to fix all their roads. That's how short summer is in Minnesota. So I started hitting closed roads, and I would veer off and try to kind of eyeball my way back. I've heard that it used to be you would unfold a map. You'd pull over, you would unfold a map. I don't know if this is true. And then navigate. I mean, that's like Amerigo Vespucci stuff, right? Well, so I'm hitting all these closed roads, and then I hit one closed road, I veer off, I hit winding dirt roads, and suddenly I get disoriented. It's a super cloudy day. All of a sudden it's raining. I can't tell what direction it is. I'm pretty good with that. I couldn't tell where the sun was. I'm on these dirt roads, and suddenly I'm completely lost. Now, I wasn't in any danger. I mean, I had at least half a tank of gas. My phone could make a call. And occasionally I would see a farmhouse. I could have stopped and asked directions. Have you ever seen a dude my age ask directions? I mean, so I wasn't in Minnesota to bust any gender stereotypes either, right? So I'm not going to ask anybody. I'm going to figure this out. I pull the car over, and I think, well, maybe my phone could download an app. So I downloaded a compass, right? So now I'm feeling like a Navy SEAL, right? I'm on these country roads. I get a compass to come up on my phone, but everywhere I point it is north. I'm not a Navy SEAL, but I don't think every direction is north. I mean, I knew all I had to do was head north. Alexandria is like due north from Lincoln. I'd be okay, but I couldn't figure out what north was. I was completely lost. And it felt wonderful. It felt invigorating. Because I'm always hyper-located. Man, I know exactly where I am, not just with GPS in your phone. I know where I am in life. I'm like hyper-located. I know I'm a father, a minister, a friend. I know where I am. I know where I'm going in life. I know what I'm seeking. I'm hyper-located. Suddenly, to be a little untethered, a little unmoored, it felt invigorating. I entered sort of an existential reverie on the dirt roads of Minnesota, thinking that if you focused your whole life trying to know exactly where you are and what your destination is, how much of life you would miss. I knew in my head that life is about the journey, not the destination. And if you're always focused on where you're going, you're not here. I knew that, but suddenly I felt it. It felt great to be just a little astray. But there was a bride waiting for me in Minnesota, and they would want me there, so I had to figure out how to get up there. Finally, I hit a paved road. I thought, okay, I'm just going to follow this paved road. I still couldn't tell any of the directions. I'm just going to follow it till I hit a little town. And I hit a little town. I called my 17-year-old son at home, and I said, go to your computer. He goes, Dad, I'm at my computer. I'm thinking, he's always at his computer, of course. And he's got like this command center with multiple screens and headphones and microphones. And I said, listen, you're going to have to talk me in. Here's the name of the town. Guide me turn by turn. So he's got his headphone. He's at the command center. Now I feel like Jason Bourne. He's like my CIA ops, right? And he's directing me every step of the way. And then I pull into Alexandria. Have you ever been there? I made it to Alexandria, and they have this big Viking statue. And I went right to the statue, and I felt this brotherhood of explorers. Because I had done Viking stuff, right? Me and the Viking. We had a beautiful time at the wedding. And then I decided I would spend the rest of the weekend at one of our sister churches. It's just west of Minneapolis on Lake Minnetonka. It's called Wayzata Community Church. One of my best buddies, the pastor, and from Alexandria to Wayzata, it's all major highways, so it was just easy peasy, right? So I go to Wayzata, and they were in a series on Buddhism, a 3-week series exploring Buddhism. And my buddy John, he knew that Buddhism's been very important in my life. So he asked if I would sort of pop out of the pews at each service and share a few words during his sermon. And I went to all 3 services and would come out of the pew and say something. Here is what I said. Buddhism makes me a better Christian. Oh, even just that sentence has a lot of implications. When I say Buddhism has made me a better Christian, it has the presumptions that religion is not some territory you're trying to defend. That being a religion is not making sure that you occupy just this specific theological territory and you don't let other understandings infiltrate in any way. No, it's a different understanding of religion. Buddhism has made me a better Christian because when I see the wisdom and the truth in other forms, and in new ways, I can bring that in to my own Christian walk. Sometimes I tell people that I am 28% Buddhist. Sometimes people say back to me, Pastor, does that mean you're only 72% Christian? And I say, oh, no, well, if you mean by Christian, if you mean am I seeking to follow Jesus Christ, I'm all in. If you mean by Christian, do I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, my light, I'm all in. But if by Christianity you mean the doctrines and beliefs and dogmas, I don't believe all of that stuff. I believe most of the doctrines most of the time. So maybe 72% is about right on that stuff. Buddhism has made me a better Christian. And by Buddhism, I primarily mean meditation. Meditation as a practice is so central to Buddhism, it is essentially Buddhism. And meditation has been a spiritual anchor in my life. If you don't meditate, I invite you to gently bring it into your life a little bit. Don't imagine it's some massive discipline you have to assume. Just try to meditate a little. It can change you. Meditation has helped bring a certain mindfulness into my life where I can be more present to the moment without judgment. I heard one Buddhist teacher tell me that mindfulness is learning to drop the escape routes. Learning to drop the escape routes. He was saying throughout most of our days, we're looking for the escape route. Like if we're in an awkward situation, or we're with people we don't really enjoy, or if the situation's anxious, we look to escape. So I'm always looking for the escape route, all through a day. And I realize someone that's busy like me, just by busyness alone, I'm looking for the escape route. How can I get to the next thing? That mindfulness is dropping that. And so instead of saying, how can I get out of this situation, to ask, how can I make this situation better? How, if I brought more presence and gentleness and compassion to this moment, how do I make it better, not escape that situation? When I would pop out of the pew and talk at Wayzata for a few moments, I decided I would share one thing about Buddhism that has been very easy for me to fold into the faith, and then one thing about Buddhism that I disagree with. Because our disagreements can be informative. They can be edifying. See, I don't imagine religions are all just exactly the same thing, and that to be inclusive, all religions should just hold hands and sing Kumbaya and assume that they're saying exactly the same thing. No, religions can be different. And even not agreeing with aspects of Buddhism enriches me. Let me explain. I'll start with what has been easy to fold into my faith, just one concept. In Mahayana Buddhism, are you familiar with the idea of a bodhisattva? Oh, by the way, you're probably not. Even though there are 500 million Buddhists in the world, there are only about 1% of Americans that are Buddhists. We don't rub elbows with lots of these ideas. So you probably don't know, but it's a beautiful concept in Mahayana Buddhism, the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva is someone, a bodhi, who has essentially achieved enlightenment or fully awakened. They have karmically progressed so that they could enter into nirvana. Nirvana, that perfect peace of nothingness. They could finally escape the cyclic, suffering nature of life, life after suffering life. They could finally escape that. But a bodhisattva chooses not to enter into nirvana, chooses instead to keep entering the cycles of life so that they can reduce the suffering of others. It's the primary compassionate act. I could get out of this situation if I want, but they choose to stay in the situation and make it better for others. That's a bodhisattva. And in many forms of Buddhist thought, anyone can become a bodhisattva. If you have decided that you want to reduce the suffering of others and be a compassionate presence, not just get out of situations. The bodhisattva. I love in the Buddhist legends, a bodhisattva is usually the most humble character. You don't recognize who they are. They're like the building custodian or they're just kind of a good old normal car mechanic down at the garage, but they're bringing a compassion to others. The bodhisattva is always the most humble person around. That's easy to fold into my idea. I think Colossians, this whole passage is a mindfulness passage. And it's about creating that desire to be a bodhisattva, to clothe yourself with compassion, and to know that everyone you meet is carrying a heavy burden. So be kind. One Buddhist teacher describes being a bodhisattva is imagining that everyone you cross, every person you pass in this day, they are your guest. This is a wonderful attitude. Every person is your guest. To treat with a generosity and hospitality and presence, they're a guest. The good thing about guests is they do move on, right? You don't have to take care of them forever, but you can tend to them at that moment. Oh, it's easy to fold in the notion of bodhisattva. But there's one Buddhist idea, a pretty central doctrine, that I actually completely disagree with. It's the doctrine of anatman. Anatman in Pali, anatman, no self. It's the Buddhist notion that there is no self. There is no permanent self or soul that you have. That's an illusion in this anatman doctrine. Well, I disagree. From my Christian perspective, it's essential that we realize you are a soul of infinite, inherent, intrinsic worth, created by God. You are a soul. This soul or person or self is essential to Christianity. I disagree. Now, I understand the strategy of Buddhist thinking. Oh, I understand why they talk about you must know you have no self, because you see, they realize that we cling to false identities, superficial identities. Oh, I get this. I agree. You've clamped down on some notion of yourself, and you hold on to that, and you defend it, and it causes much suffering to you and to those around you. So, anatman, letting go of this notion of self, it reduces your suffering. I understand that it helps them feel more at one with reality. If there's no separate self, if there's no separate identity, that you sense the unity of all things. I love that. That's awesome. Have you heard of the Buddhist that walked up to the hot dog stand? You know the Buddhist that walked up to a hot dog stand and said, "Make me one with everything." So I get why they want to say there's no self for that union. But within a Christian perspective, we take a very different tack. It's not no self, it's new self. Did you see it in Colossians? This is the Christian ideal, to create a new self. Did you see this? Here it is. Clothe yourselves with a new self that is renewed in knowledge according to the image of its creator. Here is the Christian ideal. Not no self, but a new self that understands the depth of your soul. In the knowledge of your creator, you are made in the image of your creator. Christ is all in all. You are of Christ. You have to know in your true self. Oh, Christians often haven't made it to their true self. You have to go deeper and open your mind to be renewed. The new self. So listen, if your phone is all glitched up, and you're not really sure where you are, and by that I mean who you are, where you're going, and who you're to be. Oh, then you have Colossians, the most amazing GPS. Recognize your true self. The moment you do, there will be a peace and a joy, a gentleness. You'll know who you are. In the beauty of Colossians, in the beauty of this day, thanks be to Christ. Amen.